on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business, I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of this game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
In Trinidad and Tobago, cervical cancer still remains a serious health problem, ranking the third most frequent cancer among women in this country.
So you may be happily at home not knowing you might have the early signs or the early stages of cervical cancer. So the first thing is that it can be completely without any symptoms or signs.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, coming soon to WESN Content Capital.
As you come in. Long time I see you, Joe. This station complete. Ready for children party. Mommy! Jay, you can't go nowhere with these children. And you know you can't depend on Kevin neither Steven to see about them. Yes, total waste. So I supposed to stay home whole time? Jada is 12. She could see about that. You just leave Jada to see about Kia and Kayla? I thought it was your mother or your sister. Who? Them always busy. Jada could handle that. She cooking and cleaning a long time. And the next two, better know what time it is. It's only me, you know. I will talk to my mother. She just home these days. She will make sure the children okay. Alright. Let me see the moves for later.
Before you ramage, make sure the children are okay. Call 996 to report all child abuse now. A message from the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
Don't stop.
Previously on Cover Star.
Just keeping on with my flow.
We met the voices. And we met our first two panels of judges. Episode 1, Vonette Bickford and myself, Hannah Abdul. Episode 2, Candice Alcantara and the piano girl Johanna. And shout out to our judges for tonight's episode. Jarrell Forbes, Luke Samerson, and Vonette is back. Over the last 2 episodes, we got into the covers and the judges looked, listened, and scored. 2 contestants were unable to perform due to illness. They did not score and they were out of the running. This is Cover Star, where music history meets its next voice.
On WESN, the Content Capital.
WESN.
welcome to AM Prime on WESN. I am Takia Thompson. So right away, we want to get into an interesting conversation that we have for you guys. We know Trinidad and Tobago energy sector has long been the backbone of the economy, contributing significantly to the government revenue, foreign exchange, earnings, and employment. During Tuesday talk with the MSG, Mr. Anthony Paul highlighted that governance, not just resources, is the head of the sector's challenges, arguing that decisions-making frameworks, institutional clarity, and long-term planning are critical if Trinidad and Tobago is to remain competitive and resilient. Joining me this morning is Mr. Anthony Paul, Principal Consultant at Association of Caribbean Energy Specialists. Now, he's here to help answer why it matters and how it directly affects citizens, jobs, and national development. Good morning, Mr. Paul.
Good morning. Happy to be joining you. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. So following your contributions on Tuesday Talk with MSG on the energy sector, why governance matters, we wanted to continue that conversation this morning. And for viewers who may have missed that Tuesday Talk, just, explain to us what prompted your concern about governance, and when you mention governance matters, what exactly should the public understand by that?
Let me get straight to a very easy example so people understand why it's important. We know, for instance, that the government and the countries, as you said in the opening, main source of revenue is the oil and gas industry and of forex. And we know those are in decline. And we know because of that, the government's budget is challenged and the government has to find measures to close the deficit gap. And of course, that's been coming in terms of taxes and penalties on citizens for things like driving and so on. And we've seen it lately on increased costs to small users of natural gas. But the country is losing and has lost in this century alone hundreds of billions, and that's billions with a B, of dollars in revenue simply because the government has not been able to collect the taxes that are due to us because the laws and regulations that are in place are not being implemented. And this is not guess. The government itself, a previous government, in 2014, when it commissioned a study by an international firm to see how much the value of natural gas sold from Trinidad and Tobago is reflected in the revenues reported by the companies and the taxes we collect based on that. On that study, and the government changed in 2015, and the new government saw the report and found it so important, they took it to Parliament and placed it in the public domain, and then commissioned that company to continue that study and look at what's happening since then. And in 2016, a new report came out, and that showed, in 2018, that showed that between the years 2010 and 2016, the country lost over $16 billion in tax revenue because the way the companies reported their revenue was not reflective of what the law said. And the government, meaning the agencies of state who are charged with overseeing tax collection and tax valuation and so on, had not done their work as they were meant to. And so we lost $16 billion in a 7-year span. At that time, the national debt was $22 billion. Now, put that down as one area, and I'll come back to that as to what happened and how we could have avoided that. But that is an example of why governance is important. If this industry is so important to us, contributes so much value to us, and we're not collecting what's due to us, somebody has to be held to account. And that governance, that accountability is brought to the population through mechanisms that are in place and need to be used, but the citizens need to understand what those mechanisms are and how they're being used. So if I can repeat again, governance is important in the case of oil and gas because the oil and gas under the ground doesn't belong to the government in power. It doesn't belong to the ministry in charge of managing it. it doesn't belong to the cabinet. It belongs to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And imagine if you owned, let's say, a house, and you hired somebody, a landlord, to manage it. You would want to know what that landlord is doing with that property. Did he rent it out? If so, to whom? If so, at what rate? So you would ask the question, can I see the lease? Now, under the law, everybody operating in petroleum and oil and gas must be licensed. And the law says that all licenses shall be kept in a register. And it also dictates what conditions must be in that license. In other words, a register, as we know in Trinidad and Tobago, whether it's a marriage register, births, deaths, house deeds, company registry, all these documents are public documents. This petroleum register, as the law requires, is not in place and has never been, which means that you and I, who own this resource, cannot see the lease the landlord has given to the tenant. And we don't know what's happening. So that one example I gave you is a very significant one of many, where because we don't have line of sight of what the government is doing in managing our resource, we don't know how well they're doing. But what I want to talk about today is examples of specifically the revenue losses that we've suffered over the last 20, 25 years because of lack of governance or lack of good governance. And that good governance requires that the parties you put in place must be held to account. And the only way we can hold them to account is if it's their transparency. And we can see what decisions they made, and we understand why they made those decisions, and we can see the outcomes of those decisions. And we are the ones to judge whether or not those actions and decisions are in our best interest.
So not to cut you,
yeah.
But to add in on that decision part, do you think the current structure that we currently have allows for clear, timely decision making, or would you say that's what is giving that setback and keeping the delays happening?
So what I spoke about in that conversation on the MSJ is actually we do have very good conditions in law, very clear roles and responsibilities, very clear mechanisms, but these are not being implemented. Let me tell you what I mean by that. So under the Petroleum Act and regulations, and under the Petroleum Taxes Act, the agencies who are responsible to the people are the Minister of Energy and the Minister of Finance. And under the Petroleum Act, the Minister acts through the Ministry of Energy. And under the Petroleum Taxes Act, the Minister acts through the Ministry of Finance and the Board of Inland Revenue, as it's called sometimes. So in the case of this incident where $16 billion was lost, here's what the law and the regulations say. This is the Petroleum Taxes Act. Now, in oil and gas, oil companies and oil and gas companies are taxed based on the profits of the sale of oil and gas. It's a completely different tax code for oil and gas as for corporation tax and individual personal tax, a different code and different levels of taxation. And in that taxing mechanism, these laws we have are quite old, but quite robust in a sense. When these laws came into being, it was 1969. The Petroleum Act came in 69, the regulations came in 71, the Petroleum Taxes Act came in 74. In the 60s, BP and Shell left Trinidad. And when they left the assets in the ground, and we had to scramble as a country to find a way to keep the oil producing, to keep the people employed, keep the equipment working, to keep communities alive. So we formed Trintopec of Trinidad Tesoro first, and then Trintoc. So when the law came into being, it put in place mechanisms to ensure that when these companies leave, they leave the assets in a state in which we can take it over and run it ourselves. And I'll come back to that in another case of where we've lost value. the Petroleum Taxes Act came afterwards, and in the 70s, the 71 era, before the Petroleum Taxes Act came into being, the main producers of oil, gas, and products were Amoco, Texaco, and Fertrin. And these were foreign-owned companies. And what they were doing is a practice called transfer pricing. You know, we pay taxes based on profits. Profits is the sum of your revenues minus your costs. If your revenues increase, you'd expect your profits to increase if you had standard costs. If your costs decrease, you get more profits. So what companies did back then was to increase their costs on the books, accounting books, and reduce their revenues. And the way they reduced revenues was they would sell it to an affiliated company. The international owner had different branches, different affiliated companies. And they would sell it to a trading arm, a marketing arm, at a price that was below the international market price. So the revenue they report will be lower than the real value. So the Petroleum Taxes Act instituted a mechanism that is very clear. It says if a company sells a product to a third party that is not affiliated with it, that is called an arm's length transaction. And the Minister of Finance will accept the invoice received from that third party as proof of the value sold. If, however, that sale is to an affiliated party, meaning a company or entity owned and controlled by the same party that owns and controls the licensee operator in Trinidad, that would be deemed a non-arm's length transaction. In which case, the Petroleum Taxes Act put in place a mechanism. The mechanism is the minister shall, in the law, shall, with an SH, institute a permanent petroleum pricing committee made up of senior public officers. The companies, when they export their product, whether it's oil or chemicals in the case of Fertrin, or refined products in the case of Texaco back then, the Ministry of Energy had a department called inspection. The inspectors would take a sample of the product being exported, witness the transfer to the ship that would take it away, certify the volume being sold, and therefore would have a sense of the amount going. That sample would then be taken to the Petroleum Testing Lab at Kiriri, which is set up specifically for this purpose. The testing lab would then do an assay of the product, come up with its composition, physical, chemical. And then this committee, this permanent petroleum pricing committee, would use that information and compare that product to other products that are sold on the international market, and the price quoted in different media. And there are some standard media that quote prices that the industry relies upon. And then let's say, okay, our crude, let's say, has this composition. This specific crude isn't quoted on the exchanges, but there are other crudes that if we combine them in different proportions, will have the exact same composition. So they then take this, what we call a basket of crudes, and say this basket is what we will use to assess this cargo of crude. Now, what will happen is the companies will pay their taxes quarterly based on the invoices they got from the affiliated party. Then the committee will tell the minister, this is the real value, and here's the difference. And then a few months later, the minister would have written the companies, and they will make up the difference. They will reconcile. So accounting companies will always invoice low, and then the minister will get the difference. It is heartbreaking to know, although the law requires the minister must have this committee in place, this committee has not functioned since the year 2000, 25 years. So for 25 years, the companies have been under-invoicing the country, and nobody has been going back and saying, pay us the difference. And that is why that consultant report in 2016 could show that the underreported value is actually 30 billion. The tax component is the 16 billion we lost. Now, in 2018, the Prime Minister held a big forum called Spotlight on Energy, on which there was a big hurrah about we going after this money. We never got it. We never went after it. And that has been the story of that permanent petroleum pricing committee not existent. And governments come, governments go. Ministers of finance come, ministers of finance go. Year after year in the budget, they used to promise they would reconstitute it. In recent times, they've been saying we will do a study on transfer pricing, rather than saying we will close that loophole. So that's one area, that's hundreds of billions. And in the interview with David, I went through other areas of that. Now, had that mechanism been in place as required by law, this would not be happening. That mechanism is one of the governance instruments that the law provides for. Now, governance has two core components. The legal framework, meaning laws, regulations, contracts, and other instruments subsidiary to those. And the second leg of governance is the institutions. And institutions must have capacity. They must have people who know what they're doing. Those people must be incentivized to do what they're doing well. They must have the tools to do their work. And oftentimes, that is what is missing. We haven't got the tools or the systems and procedures by which people do what they're supposed to do, and that we, the citizens, can validate that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and they're getting the results they're supposed to be giving. And if that one example doesn't wake people up, I have a whole list I can go through, and I think we should go through some of them more to show what the value loss is and how very significant it is.
Yes, so I was just about to add into that. What risk exactly are we facing right now with if nothing changes with the governance issue, and then how does it impact jobs and foreign exchange and government spending exactly?
Okay, so that revenue I mentioned, that tax revenue, is US dollars. It is foreign exchange. And they're talking about billions every year. Now, everybody knows the oil industry, and we hear this language all the time, is high capital, high risk, high taxes. I did say that there's a different tax regime for oil and gas as there is against corporation tax and individual personal taxes. The tax regime in the upstream oil and gas, meaning exploration and production, getting oil out of the ground and selling it, is 50%. 50% tax on profits and a 5% unemployment levy. In other words, when the oil industry came into being, the government put a levy on the companies saying, we have to find ways to create jobs in other industries. And we'll use the oil industry to get some money to do that. In addition to which, oil is a non-renewable resource, as is natural gas. And once it's taken out of the ground, there's nothing left. So there's a recognition that a company might extract your oil. They might do it inefficiently. They might do things to change the pricing or the costs that might influence the profitability, and we can get zero taxes. So the company would have made money selling it, perhaps, or its affiliated party, but we get nothing, and the oil is gone. So what countries have done historically, not only in oil and gas, is implement something called a royalty. And a royalty is the cost of the input into your business. Now, in a business, you have inputs. If you were, for instance, a tailor, you'll buy cloth, you'll buy threads, you'll buy equipment and materials. In oil and gas, you'd buy rigs or you'd rent rigs, you'd buy or rent seismic vessels, and you'd put these things, but you sell oil. Now, a tailor sells the cloth that's finished. An oil company sells the oil. If the tailor didn't pay for the cloth, but took it on credit from the cloth maker and sold at a loss, then the cloth maker has no cloth and no money. If the companies sell the oil and make no profit, we have no oil and no money. So what royalty does is recognize there's a cost of the input, a value, of the input, and that value must be paid for like any other input. And that assures the country or the owner of the resource, they get some revenue, even if the operator is profitable or not. So another mechanism we have in place is royalties. Now, for a very long time, we had almost zero royalty on natural gas. And people who in the industry kept begging the government, please put a royalty, because natural gas is now our biggest producing asset, creating the most value for us. In 2018, the Minister of Finance finally introduced a royalty at 12.5%. However, what the law says, which is something government knows and should have addressed, is that the royalty is cost recoverable. What that means is that the royalty is treated as any other cost. So if I hired a rig, that's a cost. When I sell the oil, I can take the money I spent back before I declare a profit. That's my cost, right? Now, in the same way, if I pay the government royalty of 12.5%, when I'm computing my taxes, I can say, oh, I spent 12.5%, so therefore I'm taking it back. In other words, the royalty is a gift on the one hand, and then something we return with the other hand. So the law is flawed. And that's a very rare situation in this industry, to have those things flawed, those things recoverable. We also have bonuses. So when we have competition among companies to come into Trinidad and Tobago, we ask them, give us a bonus when you sign this contract, and tell us how much bonus you're willing to give. And based on that, we will decide who is the best party to give this contract. And this is called a signature bonus. Again, this is common. We have bonuses in our laws and contracts, but our tax law says that bonuses, again, are cost recoverable. So it's not a prize. It's actually something we give and take. It's a loan. And let me tell you something, companies recover their costs plus any interest and any administration or management costs that go into that. And those are high. So we pay ourselves, we pay by ourselves, we pay for the things that we get. And that's one. Now, I mentioned earlier that in the 1960s, Shell and BP left Trinidad, and we put mechanisms in place in the law to make sure that when companies leave, and they will leave, companies will leave. That's the nature of the oil industry. You know, you produce oil, the field decline, it doesn't get profitable for you, you have better places to spend your money, you go. You know, as a country, we don't have options. We can't go anywhere else. There's no second Trinidad and Tobago. We have to manage what we have best. So what we put in law is that when you're leaving, we've taken oil and gas out of the ground, you've sold it, you've used that revenue to pay for all the costs, for the wells you've drilled, for the seismic surveys you've run, for the people you've employed, for the buildings you've rented, for the cars you've rented, for the holidays your staff have taken. That oil and gas has paid for that. Now, you may have put the money up front, and then you recover it from the sale of the oil and gas. And that's why it's called cost recovery. So ultimately, we pay for it. So the reason that the law says at the end of the license area, you have an obligation to keep the assets in an operable state. And the assets will transfer to the state at no cost. Because, in fact, there's a cost. We paid for it through the oil. So what happens is that in countries who have, and most countries have a similar thing, at the end of the license period, companies may want to extend it. What countries do is say, fine, these are the assets that you've claimed cost against. Let's look at the value for that. If you want it, you can either pay me for it, or I can keep ownership and you rent it for me. I lease it to you. In Azerbaijan a few years ago, and Azerbaijan only started producing big oil from the offshore in the century, right? And when the first contracts with Exxon, Shell, and those and BP ended, Azerbaijan gave them new contracts. On the very same day, the old contract ended and said, in return for my infrastructure you built with my money, with my oil, you'll give me $3 billion in my heritage fund. So they paid for it. You know what we've done? We've done this time and time again. We just renew the license and give it back to the companies. Not only that, we also give them back the data that we have paid for. And in oil and gas, data is king. Data is very valuable. And we can't use it to do work in areas adjacent to it, which is very critical in oil and gas. And I can come back to that. So that's another major value transfer. Have we gotten that money? It happens regularly. You'd have seen recently where BP sold some assets to Perenco, where Woodside sold some fields to Perenco. And these fields include wells, and wells cost tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. Platforms, pipelines, again, billions of US dollars transferred. You know, one of the saddest days I saw was in 2018, when knowing, and I know the government knew because I myself made it my business to tell governments every time a license is expiring, long before, and the negotiating, please do not renew these licenses. Please, on the last day, let the contract expire and then give them a new one. But in that new one, make provisions for the assets you've now handed over to them. In 2018, the government extended the contract, extended is the term I use, instead of renewed. The contract for Shell, instead of a new contract, for the Hibiscus field. And the Hibiscus field was critically important because it was meant to be a hub in which gas from Dragon field in Venezuela would come to Trinidad. And the pipeline that connects Hibiscus to Point Fortin to the Atlantic LNG would take the gas there. We would have owned that on the day that license terminated, and we could have made money from having gas, shall I buy it from us, or use it and pay us for using it. You know what we did? And I know that the minister knew. We decided to renew the contract and then announce to the country proudly that we now have a right to move our share of Dragon gas to that facility. But we will pay a fee for using it. And if there's any upgrades to be done, we'll pay our share of the cost. So we've given away assets that we paid for, and now we're paying to use it. And again, this is billions of US dollars. And that is happening time and time again. Yeah. So these are the kinds of things that you say, okay, this is a one-off. And it happens, every time a license ends every 20 years. But there are other things as well. And you talk about jobs, for instance. Everybody knows the industry creates high-paying jobs, good quality jobs. Everybody knows that locals want to get into those jobs. And countries all over the world have local content policies. Well, guess what? Because we had a prime minister in Eric Williams who understood the relationship between resources, labor, and capital, he made sure that we had a Petroleum Act and regulations that meant that we had access to the value the resource created. And that resource could help us generate labor, better quality labor, and aggregate capital. And the laws reflect that. In fact, before the laws went into being, the Prime Minister at the time convened a commission of inquiry in 1963. This is 1 year after independence. This commission was headed by the head of the Iranian National Oil Company, a big exploration and production company. And it included the head of the Austrian National Oil Company. Yes, Austria had a national oil company, but it was a refining company. So we had exploration and production, we had refining. People in Trinidad don't always, the current generation, don't know our proud history as a refining nation. We started exporting oil in 1908. We had our first refinery in 1912. During the Second World War, Trinidad and Tobago had the biggest refining capacity in the British Empire. And it was a major source of fuel for the war effort. And the Germans tried to disrupt the movement of fuel by sending the U-boats after the tankers and the convoys that carried them. So much so that more German submarines, U-boats, are sunk off the coast of Trinidad than in the rest of the entire Atlantic. And during the Second World War, we had that big refinery complex. So we were always adding value. So Eric Williams knew the value of taking oil and gas, oil in particular, and adding value to it. And he understood it. So when he put this committee in place, he looked at both the upstream and the downstream. He had these two experts in there. And that committee came up with recommendations that sought to ensure we built people, we transferred knowledge, transferred capability, we captured more value through revenue, through our taxes, and we also added value, meaning we didn't export crude oil, but we refined the crude oil and exported products, and that product is more valuable. That also was put into law to cover natural gas at the time. Since the 1960s, we have conditions in there for oil and natural gas. And the law is very clear. It's absolutely clear. Any person conducting operations in oil and gas must be licensed by the minister. Why is this important? Laws can be broad. Regulations can be a little bit more specific. But licenses target the actual activity you're undertaking in the conditions you're undertaking it, and allows the government to either give more conditions or give some incentives. Yeah? So licensing is important. Again, I mentioned earlier that the law requires that the minister keep a register of licenses that says the start date, the assets involved, the end date, the terms, conditions. It says any transfers, any court matters, any of those things must be recorded in the register. Just like if you had to register your vehicle, you'd have to have transfers in there, wouldn't you? You'd have to have the date, the model, and those kinds of things. So, but this register is not in place. In fact, the licenses are not even in place. There's not a single license in Point Lisas. Can you believe that? Although there's been a model petrochemical license on the books for years and years. And the law says specifically there must be petrochemical licenses. But one area that's quite important and where the jobs come in, because we get jobs in oil and gas in the operations of producing companies, upstream in the exploration and production part of it, midstream in the pipelines and conversion, and downstream in the petrochemicals and refining and so on. But when oil companies sell the oil, I mentioned they use the revenue from the sale of oil to recover the costs. And they have costs in two brackets: third-party costs, in other words, other contractors, and their own costs, their staff, their revenue, their rental places, and so on. And people know taxes are high, 50%. So they say, okay, when you hear oil is $100 or $60, and here taxes is 50%, immediately your mental model goes to, okay, $100 oil, 50%, therefore $50 in taxes. $60 oil, 50%, you put $30 in taxes. Well, the reality is the companies have to pay their bills first, right? And taxes, as I said earlier, comes from profits. Do you know how much of the revenue from oil and gas goes to pay for services, goods and services?
So actually, I was about to ask that question that you refer back to me. I feel like viewers listening in and watching would want to know exactly how much. So tell us.
It's more than 80%, more than 80%.
Wow.
And then the company's own cost is 5 to 10%. In other words, between 85 and 90% of the revenue goes into costs.
Wow.
So the taxes remaining are only taxed on 10% of the revenue.
So,
right?
No, yes, go ahead.
So what countries have done, and what Trinidad did in the very beginning, right, is say, we want our people to get some of that 80%. So we want them to be able to do the jobs, provide the services that get that money, right? Now we know, you and I know, you can't provide a service unless you have the capability. So the law also provides that you build capacity in the local supply chain. This is 1960s and 71. Now, what's interesting to note, and you're too young to know this, but between the law coming into place in 69 and the regulations, and as I mentioned, the law makes sure enforces policies, which policies came out of the Commission of Inquiry. But you can't legislate activities. You can regulate them because it has to be more granular. So between 69, when the law came out, and 71, when the regulations came out, we've been preceded by the exit of two major companies, BP and Shell. But in 70, we had what is referred to as the Black Power Revolution. It was a big movement for social justice. And a lot of people refer to it as Black Power. Many people don't realize or don't remember or don't know that this involved a joint movement between the labor unions from the oil field workers trade union and the sugarcane workers union. So the two major industries came together to protest for better conditions. And those conditions included better salaries, better conditions of work, better participation.
So as you mentioned, from going back, and unfortunately, we do have to start wrapping up the conversation, but it's going so good. Just to put in on the better conditions and how can it be implemented in this time and to flip things around or change how things would have been moving?
So the government had always put mechanisms in place, and people in the law, if you get a license for exploration or production, typically there'd be a provision for training. And every year, a company will pay $100,000 or something, increasing it to the government, and the government will give scholarships. The company was also had to employ locals and train them, right? And the suppliers had to be locals. So what the government did is enforce that through a strong ministry who could implement policy and regulations. In the 1990s, when natural gas started to boom, and the gas industry took over, the government realized things needed to change. Government moved slowly. We didn't change the regulations, and we haven't, and we still need to. But in early 2000, government put in place a local content policy that put some good measures in place to make sure that locals get that 80%. That policy has been left in abeyance. Think about this. If I said the amount of the pie left after costs are recovered are between 15 and 20%. Government share is 50%. That means the most government will get is 10%, or 7.5%, yeah, of all. In fact, governments get less, but we haven't got time for that. However, if local companies got 10% of the cost of goods and services to third parties, that would be 80%, 8% survey of the entire 80% of third party. In other words, we could almost double our revenue from the oil and gas industry and in foreign exchange.
Wow.
Now, again, in the same way the Permanent Petroleum Pricing Committee is not operational, there is a permanent local content committee that is in place on paper, but has never implemented the recommendations they themselves made, because those recommendations had to be put either into regulations or into action, because they're already regulations, by the ministry or the ministries. Those have not been done. So the institutions that have the instruments and the authority to make the difference, to do the things that the law requires, are not doing them. And the population does know, but the population doesn't quite understand the nuances. And there's no incentive to the persons involved, the technocrats, to do their work, and there's no penalty for not doing it. So whether they do it or not, they go to work, they go home, they get paid.
Right.
Nobody's any better. So that is why governance is so important. Governance requires that those people responsible can be held to account. And the amount of revenue lost, you wouldn't have to be penalizing people for speed limits, for having a broken windshield. That's small change. And there's a lot more that can be made if we just implement the laws that are on the books and collect the money that is due to us. The companies know that this is due to us. They know we can come for it. They will protest, but they know they have to give up. But they're cleverer than that. They can influence decision makers in different ways that you and I can't. And for some reason, the people who are making decisions and leading this industry find it easier not to penalize the company that is penalizing it, but they come back because it's not a penalty, it's an implementation of what's in place. But to penalize the people. And that is the worry, that is the reason I think we should have good governance, to make sure the people get their fair share of the resources they own.
Thank you so much for that. And as we end the conversation, is there anything, we had a full discussion on what was going on, we were flowing with it, but if there's one takeaway that you'd like viewers to take from this discussion, what would it be?
So everybody is concerned that the oil and gas industry in Trinidad and Tobago is in a sunset stage. But how do we know? Do we know what's in the ground? Do we know that those who are managing what's in the ground are managing efficiently? We need to know. We have to have conversations about what's there, how it's being managed, what the outlook is like. And we need to know, people need to know, what is the potential for new revenue. Right? So we heard this big hullabaloo about the new contract by Exxon to find oil. Now, I understand what that geology is like. My background is a geologist. I understand what the government's trajectory on licensing has been. And I really, really, really worry. Not about Exxon. Exxon is a great company and they will do a good job. I really worry that we might not get anything at all or much from that contract. We might find a lot of oil, you get a lot of headlines, you can say this oil is producing tens of thousands of barrels a day. It can be producing billions of revenue, but we will get a fraction based on what I understand that we've signed. And I haven't seen a contract, but I've seen the behavior and the trajectory of our licensing rounds, and we've seen it all. We've seen how poorly recent licensing rounds have been. And we haven't got, in my view, a good handle on either getting the oil and gas out of the ground or getting what's due to us once it comes out of the ground. And I think the country, the population, should be more diligent and ask people to speak to them on it. Don't let people fool you with jargon and language you don't understand. Ask them to simplify it. And you in the media have an important job in acting as translators between technocrats who speak jargon and the population who need to understand.
Yes, absolutely. So again, thank you, Mr. Paul, for joining us this morning and for having this discussion. It is definitely something we would be following up on and would continue to share the story as we progress with it. At this time, guys, we are going to go to break. And when we come back, we have another interesting conversation that we want to give to you all.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, coming soon to WESN Content Capital.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Don't stop.
Previously on Cover Star.
Just keeping on with my flow.
We met the voices And we met our first 2 panels of judges. Episode 1, Vonette Bickford and myself, Hannah Abdul. Episode 2, Candice Alcantara and the piano girl Johanna. And shout out to our judges for tonight's episode. Jarrell Forbes, Luke Samerson, and Vonette is back. Over the last 2 episodes, we got into the covers and the judges looked, listened, and scored. 2 contestants were unable to perform due to illness. They did not score and they were out of the running. This is Cover Star, where music history meets its next voice.
On WESN, the content capital.
As you come in. Long time I see you. This station complete. Ready for children party. Mommy! Jay, you can't go nowhere with these children. And you know you can't depend on Kevin neither Steven to see about them. Yeah, total waste. So I supposed to stay home the whole time? Jada is 12. She could see about them. You just leave Jada to see about Kia and Kayla. I thought it's your mother or your sister. Who? Them always busy. Jada could handle that. She cooking and cleaning a long time. And the next 2, better know what time it is. It's only me, you know. I will talk to my mother. She just home these days. She will make sure the children okay. Alright. Let me see the moves for later.
Before you ramage, make sure the children okay. Call 996 to report all child abuse now. A message from the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movie Town, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond
wanna-
to me.
respond to
me
you?
how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
In this now, you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title. It's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
You come in. Long time I see you, Joe. This station complete. Ready for children party. Mommy! Jay, you can't go nowhere with these children. And you know you can't depend on Kevin neither Steven to see about them. Yeah. Total waste. So I supposed to stay home whole time? Jada is 12. She could see about that. You just leave Jada to see about Kia and Kayla. I thought it was your mother or your sister. Who? Them always busy. Jada could handle that. She cooking and cleaning a long time. And the next two, better know what time it is. It's only me, you know. I will talk to my mother. She just home these days. She will make sure the children okay. Alright. Let me see the moves for later.
Before you ramage, make sure the children okay. Call 996 to report all child abuse now. A message from the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
Welcome back to AM Prime this morning. Now, I just want to say to Kia, that was a great conversation that you had just now with Mr. Anthony Paul. Yeah. And as Kia was sharing with me, there's a lot more from that conversation that she wants to extract and have with Mr. Paul. So we can consider looking into expanding that conversation some more and have Mr. Paul back on as long as he's willing. Because it was a very educational, informative conversation. Yeah. Now, jumping straight into our next topic for this morning, we are joined by Mr. Victor Francis. He's the founder of Fortress Fitness Lifestyle magazine. The publication officially launched 3 years ago, and today Victor is here to share just how far the brand has come. Fortress Fitness has just released its 6th issue, now printed and in circulation, marking a major milestone for the magazine. As we take a look at some of the past covers on screen now, this is from the first
the first issue of the magazine to the 5th. We are going to further talk about the magazine's growth and how Mr. Francis has sustained this magazine over the years as a local fitness lifestyle publication. So good morning, Mr. Francis, and welcome to AM Prime.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, for viewers who may be discovering or hearing about this magazine, Fortress Fitness Lifestyle Magazine, for the first time, just tell us what is the magazine all about? Give us a quick overview of in simple terms, what exactly is this magazine?
All right, morning again. Well, the magazines is actually to really educate people, right? When coming to lifestyle changes and, discipline, right? So what has happened is that whilst I've been a trainer for a very long time, I recognize that training people alone is not really the ideal way to really get them holistically healthy. And the gym or the savannah is a good start, but really start in the kitchen. So what I wanted to do is have something that where people could go to and open and get advice, see life stories of people who transform their life, have alternative options when coming to meal prepping, and advice on how to eat properly, doctor's advice, nutritional advice. So the magazine is like a go-to Bible for people who will really willing to change their life to a healthier lifestyle.
Right. Now, how has the vision for Fortress Fitness evolved since its launch 3 years ago? Because we took a look at some of the past editions or the past issue covers.
Yeah.
So just talk about the progress that you've made with the magazine from the first edition to now at the 6th.
Well, right. So the first magazine, just like a birth of anything new, you have to find a way. But I always have a vision what I wanted for the magazine. So from the beginning of the magazine to this day, we have managed to not just have the magazine. I needed to really reach people more than just the magazine. So we also have a podcast, which is Fortress Fitness TT on YouTube, where we interview doctors, nutritionists, people who into the health and wellness niche. And also I go around the country doing health and wellness symposium. So I cover all the avenues where I can reach the people, not just the magazine. So it has grown actually, and now people have been really engaging in the magazine. And I don't know if you all know, this last issue, physical magazine, it would have reached what I would call globally, Caribbean and international.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So there's the difference now. I know the magazine was digital. Now this 6th edition is a printed edition of the magazine. Why was that step so important to you to get this physically printed and not just a digital copy?
Right. So I started with digital copy because I wanted, again, I know the world, everybody's social media, and there's a way I can reach a great deal of people. But also there's also a percentage of people that really more mature, that do really deal with the social media, things like that. And also when I recognize that, hey, where can I, if I decide to go physical, where would I put this magazine? And I decided, I say, you know what, where people will go for help when they're sick, in doctor's office, dentist's office, medical institution and places like that. So when you go there waiting for services, at least you can pick up the magazine and see the same thing in those places as if you were scrolling online. So that's the reason why I decided to go physical, and all the issues going forward now will be physical and digital together.
Right. Now, there you mentioned the magazine now being circulated in other countries. Now, we have Tobago, Grenada, St. Lucia, and even the United States. Talk about that expansion and what it meant for you for the magazine, and how did you ensure that this happened?
Right. So I because of the podcast, really, in my reach expand like that because of the podcast, because I have been invited a couple of times on Caribbean Zoom, where I met Dr. Hinson in particular. He's a medical doctor in New York, Queens there. And I met him on a Zoom, and he liked what I was doing. So he decided he wanted to come on my podcast. So from that, we exchanged numbers, and, he told me anything to help, because he actually doing the same thing out there as a doctor, trying to help people fight and combat the lifestyle diseases. And same thing when coming to the posting in Greendot and St. Lucia. It is medical practitioner or health and wellness ambassadors I would have met on a Zoom, and they would have all came on my podcast, and that's where the connection started.
Do you think that, I know, because I like to think that the print industry is, I wouldn't say fleeting, but it is definitely, I think, harder now to get people to say, read a magazine, read a newspaper. Has it been difficult in that sense? So I know you've got a lot of push, a lot of help via your podcast, but do you think it has been more difficult now to get people interested in picking up a magazine to read it?
Well, when I started this magazine some years ago, I was told that, right, because it's a social media platform, everybody on social media, nobody reading magazine, and it's probably true, right? That's why I started digital. But also, when you go to a medical institution or in any place where you're looking for medical advice, you will pick up a book and read. Or I myself, if I go to the doctor or any kind of places where provide services when coming to health and wellness, you will pick up a book and read, because you have to wait your turn. So and that is why the book is in all the health institution in Trinidad right now, because of those institutions. You have to wait your turn, and you have to read some to buy time. Just so some people will go on the phone, some people will actually pick up a book and read. It might be a more senior person in the country, over 40 or 50 maybe, might pick up the book outside of scrolling the phone. So I just actually wanted to capture all avenues of the magazine so people can really get help. My mission is to really try to help people, because my first symposium, I had someone from the Diabetic Association, and we have a great deal of people in Trinidad and Tobago diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and the percentage at that time was around 70%, and there's a lot. And that really is a lifestyle of, habits of eating a particular way that bring on these lifestyle diseases on us. So my mission is really to really educate, and not just educate, but help and have the services and the professionals. If you really want to change your life, you can actually open a magazine and you get contacts, see stories, personal trainers, everybody that can help you on your journey. That's what the magazine is for. It's like, again, that's why it's Fortress Fitness Lifestyle Magazine. It's not a fitness magazine.
It's fitness and lifestyle. And I think, I understand finding that niche space where the magazine can flourish was also critical. I do want to get into, what do you think helped the magazine remain consistent and sustainable now? You would have mentioned just now, the purpose that you wanted it for is not to help motivate persons on their health and fitness journey. Now, I took a look through, I glanced through the first edition of the magazine, and I saw all the various articles where you would have introduced different normal people, personal trainers, persons who work out at the gym consistently. There was a point where it spoke about, I think the first edition was fitness through the ages.
Yes, yes.
And I found that was very clever, very inspiring, to say the least. So looking at that, I see you're targeting a certain type of audience, people who, not just young like myself, but the older generation as well. Fitness is something that is for everybody, and you don't have to be young to go to the gym.
Correct.
And the inspiration behind it was incredible. So have you been, is that something that you are looking to carry out throughout the magazine to sustain and to keep it consistent?
Yes, because what has happened, we have this false belief in this part of the world that as soon as you reach 40, it's time to pull out the wheelchair and the walking stick, right?
Yeah.
And I letting people know that's why I put those persons in it. All right, actually, some of the most fittest people I've met in this country is over 40 with the best bodies, male and female, and not taking nothing away from anybody under that age. I mean, I'm talking about people who don't compete. It's just people who just taking care of their health. And when you see that guy on the front page of that first issue, he's actually 70, right? And
wow.
He's a 70 that looks pretty well, move pretty well, and there's no. He's not a normal 70-year-old.
Yes.
He just decided, you know what, some years ago, I am not going to let what people, opinion of age really, dawn on me. Because I often say this, you can't change aging, but you can change the way that you age with the life that you choose to live and the things that you decide to do. Simple as that. And that's why all the magazine will always have photos of, while this is not a fitness magazine, I put people like that to inspire people to the health wellness journey. And I think it's issue 4 or 5, they have a younger version of people, Malik Wilson, who is a junior attorney. We have these two girls at the side. They have stories of, going through adversity and triumph, and the gym and their lifestyle will have helped them go through certain, operations and things like that. Plus they actually came back out of those adversity and talking to people about changing their life as well. So it's not just the aesthetics. They will look a particular way, but they have a story as well. The one in green, she have a healthy juice that she sell every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, in Savannah and things like that. So every person you see, they have a story, and they will always have a story, because that's the purpose of the magazine. Is, again, it's not just for the aesthetics and who looking good, and that's fine. But it's really to inspire you, because each person, they have a story. It's not just pics. Each picture you see in any of the magazine, they have a bio and a story of the individual and the journey and why they choose to walk that road of health and fitness.
Now that the magazine has expanded in different countries in the Caribbean and internationally, how are you, how do you decide on the stories to chime in on, or the stories to focus on, in keeping with the, what is it?
The different things happening right now.
Yes, and there's another, the culture of where, of where the magazine is being placed or circulated. How are you deciding on who gets featured, or who to, highlight and put out, based on.
All right. Well, first of all, let me ask this question. Any of you all, go to the gym, go to the Savannah, or make steps like that?
Yes.
Right. So there's a story there, because simple as that. You're all a professional woman, and you all decided, you could do so many things outside of go to the gym or go and walk around Savannah or something like that. That is what I'm trying to let people know. All of us have a life, we have families, we have jobs and things like that. But it shouldn't stop us from, taking a moment out of our day, whether it's half an hour, 45 minutes, in order to put ourselves first. Gymming or exercising is the one thing you can do for yourself, which is solely for you. And to answer your question concerning how do I choose persons, the podcast is one, and I go to all these pop-up events. I scroll on social media. I go to gyms. I meet people randomly and have a question. My name is Victor Francis. I created magazines. I do into this health and fitness and all of that. And talk. What do you do? And everybody have a story.
Yes.
Every person have a story. And right now, I heavily just be in San Fernando because down there I just can't stay in East West Corridor. I have to go different parts of the country, and that's how I find personnel I'm working right now with a group in San Fernando called ICNTT, and with Fitzgerald and his team, and that group is about wellness as well, and they actually, taking over San Fernando in events, wellness events, and healthy shots, and just doing things to allow people to take themselves seriously, mind, body, and soul. And so Fitzgerald and his team, the ICNTT team, you'll all see me posting them, and we will see them in the magazine, upcoming magazines. So there's a potential person as well. And who knows, one of you all might make my April month and cut.
And not, well, I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't be upset. But one of the things that I did notice, I think it was in the 4th edition of the magazine, there was a feature article with from a Grenadian individual, Lynette Narine, and you highlighted her products. And I got a glimpse of, different aspects of the magazine, not just highlighting persons of interest, but also, things from whether it's local, regional, the international space, and just products that, I guess, aid in or help in health, fitness, mind, body, soul, all of it. So these are things that we can expect from the magazine, Fortress Fitness Lifestyle magazine, to be exact. Now, before we wrap up, I'd want to know what is next for Fortress Fitness Lifestyle magazine, and how can people get their hands on this 6th edition issue?
Okay, what is next for Fortress Fitness Lifestyle magazine? As you may know, that is every quarter we launch a magazine, started like that with digital. So now we're going to be physical, and you can get your copy whenever it launch through contacting myself or my editor and chief canvas, Reed Bettel. Our contacts are all over the social media. Plus, I usually do videos saying where the magazine will be located in this country, and again, it will definitely be in the HealthNet, all the HealthNet location Trinidad. It will be in some of the insurance company. I'm doing the collaboration with a couple of big insurance company right now. It will be in those buildings and whatever outlet they have. So it's not a magazine. Very rare you'll see it in the gyms, because it's not for people to just watch the pictures and just put on. That's not what it's intended to do. So that's why it's not in gyms. Whilst you might see gym people in it. So it will be in most medical places, facilities in Trinidad, and outlets like that, and health stores, that sell organic stuff and things like that. Yes, that's what the magazine will be. So before it launch, I will usually list out where you could find the magazine. This 6th issue, went really fast because of, a couple well shipped out of the country. And yes, the magazine also have services of products and people with products actually that can help you in whatever journey you're looking to really achieve in your health. So if you that person you mentioned from Greendot with the C3 oil, that oil is really good, and I met her actually. I went Greendot, I met her because I actually purchased some oil, and I found that it's good. I did some research, and when it's a gymmer or if it's someone that goes chancellor or whatever, you always have an aches in between, a knee, an ankle. So that spray is really well, and I gravitate with it. So I say, you know what? I spoke to her, and she was really, really appreciative of me having her in the magazine. So it's people and services like that will always be in the magazine, each issue, as I continue to bring them out one magazine at a time.
Gotcha. Can you reiterate the social media? Because I think I actually went on just now. Is it Fortress Fitness 050?
Right. So yes, that is on Instagram, I believe, and the Facebook is Fortress Fitness Lifestyle Magazine. There's a group. That's actually a group that would have a couple hundred people in it, because of when I have any events, I usually do wellness walk and things like Bamboo Cathedral, Chancellor, Mount St. Benedict, things like that. I group up with other groups, a fitness group, and we do those kind of walk during the course of the year. because I don't really support just training for Carnival. That's not my thing. You know, I encourage people to maintain that discipline for that 1 month throughout the year, and you'll be okay for the next year, you know. So the Instagram page is, yes, that is correct. It's the same on TikTok, and on Facebook, it's Fortress Fitness Lifestyle Magazine, and on YouTube, it's Fortress Fitness TT. You can go and see all the podcasts I would have done in the last 2 years, and you know, speaking to some of the personnel that you may see in some of these magazines, and they could, you know, they really explain in depth their services and what they do and how it could contribute to someone really changing their life. You know, whether it's doctors, nutritionists, it's so much. So going forward, you know, as I said, it's just to grow the brand, to make people aware, to try to save life. This is really a life-saving mission I'm on, because it made people might say life-saving, but yes, because, you know, people are getting diabetes from the age now, type 2, from 30, right? So it means that, you know, our foods, you know, this Western style food that we are eating, which is not even our culture, that is really not adding value to our life. It's really taking away life from ourselves. So those are the kind of messages and podcasts I just have with different guests, and all agree throughout the world that the food is where the illness starts.
I agree. I 100% agree with that. Whenever you're down, you're sick, anything, they always, the first thing that I think should be recommended is, what are you eating? What is your diet? Like, and that's just for the fastest recovery possible. Now, I really enjoy this. I love that it's not just a magazine, but it's something of a community that you've built and you continue to build. So I wish you all the best, Mr. Francis. Thank you so much for coming on AM Prime this morning and sharing this with us, giving us an update as to, you know, how far the magazine has gotten in the past 3 years since your first edition to now the 6th.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope to see both of you soon in maybe my upcoming magazine to hear your story about all the journey on, you know, what you will do when coming to your health and wellness, and you could inspire some other podcasters and radio personalities, people, to change their life. I met a couple, and you know, on interviews as well, and they actually agree with the same thing you said there, that the importance of lifestyle change and health and fitness. So yes, so thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure, honestly.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so that was a very entertaining conversation.
It definitely was.
And I love talking about health and fitness, and it's something that I believe that we should have conversations like consistently, because we're in a time now where, you know, as Mr. Francis said, the things that we eat, we may not realize it, but it does have a big impact on how we live and our health.
How it would, definitely with the health and how it goes. So it should be implemented, is what I'm saying, in our everyday lifestyle, to change up the diet, to change up what we normally or naturally consume.
And it's not even just, I heard somebody say, it's not just your diet, it's like, don't go on a diet thinking
that it's going to solve
everything. It's going to solve, you know. No, eating right or eating healthy is a lifestyle change, and it's a decision that you make every day, because it's easy to eat bad.
No, it is.
And it's quick. That's why they call it fast food. Like, it's quick and it's easy, it's simple. But eating healthy is a choice, and it does take a bit more effort. But in the end, it is worth it. 100%.
It is rewarding, definitely.
Yeah.
So with that, you know, we want to share the quote of the day, and it says, "The habits you choose daily quietly shape the life you'll be proud of later." So I'll say it again. The habits you choose daily quietly shapes the life you'll be proud of later.
Now, again, TK is always coming with these quotes that hit the nail on the head. It just goes to show again, you know, it's a choice, and once you choose the right habits, it works out in the end for you. So, Yeah, that's your code for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining Taki and I on AM Prime this morning. We do have Sean Michael Small on the hour of 8 o'clock with Talking Point as usual. So stay tuned for that on WESN. We will see you back here again tomorrow morning. Stay safe, stay inspired, stay informed. Bye-bye.
Bye.
WESN.
As you come in. Long time I see you, Joe. This station complete. Ready for children party. Mommy! Jay, you can't go nowhere with these children. And you know you can't depend on Kevin neither Steven to see about them. Yeah, total waste. So I supposed to stay home the whole time? Jada is 12. She could see about them. You just leave Jada to see about Kia and Kayla. I thought it's your